Before we get into the details of Lasso Security and LLM security itself, I'd love to hear about your journey, your own personal journey. And can you tell us a little bit about your own background and what led you into the world of AI and security?
Sure thing. So first of all, thanks for having me here today. It's a pleasure. Let me tell you a bit about my background. So if I'll go way back, I'm actually, as a young kid, mathematics was running in my veins, but also hacking into all sorts of games and systems since very early age. So I was a geek, let's call it as such. But professionally, for the last 25 years, I've been in the software industry, always on the vendor side, always enterprise software, B2B, security, and monitoring. So I've been around the block for a lot of years now. And as we like to say, this is not our first rodeo. So it's not my first rodeo as well. I started in the early 2000s as a software developer in a company called Mercury Interactive. And relatively quickly, I moved on there, managed development teams. And later on, I moved to product management, where I spent the majority of my career. We got acquired by HP Software at one point, and then started the journey between startups and corporates. And what I like telling to young entrepreneurs that are trying to sell to the corporate world, to the enterprises, you have to work in one in order to understand what makes it tick. And I think this is where the first time I learned what makes it tick, how it works. And I spent there a few years. And then I got back to another startup, always jumping between startups and the corporates, to a company called Optier, which was doing transaction instrumentation. Spent there a few years. At the end of it, I was the general manager of the local site, leading all of R&D and product management. We got acquired by SAP, yet another big corporate. Got in, and within these corporates, all the time, I'm trying to change it from within, do a lot of innovation, involved in a lot of ventures, sometimes in M&As. At SAP, I ran in their first entrepreneurship program, running an internal cyber venture. This is also how I met someone that was going to be a partner of mine going forward. Again, after a few years, I left. That was already 2017. And I left and I founded, and I was the CEO of a startup in cybersecurity called SegaSec, doing brand protection and anti-phishing. This is where we got the partner that I mentioned. He was the CTO of SegaSec. We had quite a successful journey, but a relatively fast one. We got acquired at the end of 2019 by Mimecast. So beginning of 2020, I got in there, COVID hit. Unfortunately, I left there. We parted ways later in the year. And then I took some break, but I moved to the other side and started doing a lot of angel investing on my own and working with funds, joining boards of a few companies, advising a few companies, and then definitely changing gears. And then that might relate to another story of how Lasso began, but fast forward a few years later, but that would probably relate to the story behind Lasso and what brought us there.
Yeah.
But after a few years as an investor, then I founded Lasso. But again, we'll touch upon that in a bit.
Yeah, no, that's fascinating. I'd love to talk a little bit more about we'll get into it in terms of your own corporate experience and how that's going to play into some of the challenges that you're seeing within the enterprise. And I would love to talk about that. So in terms of how Lasso was founded, can you kind of share with us the inspiration of Lasso Security? What was behind it? What sparked the idea? You said you met your co-founder. So how did it all begin?
Right. So being on the investor side, and as I previously said, I didn't have much time for anything, but I was semi-retired. And towards the end of 2022, the time that generative AI, ChatGPT, burst into everyone's life, I started playing with it on my own. I got back to coding, got very excited about it. And I thought that cybersecurity is going to be a big, big nightmare in this world. And I was always saying that cyber is very crowded and everything looks the same. And there are no new problems. So this new problem came into life, and I thought that this is going to be very, very interesting. So I started exploring it a bit, started talking with a few funds to see what's going on in that world. And there was also a team that I invested in, a team of former employees of mine. So my first developer at SegaSec, my first product manager, and a third person that they were working in the last few years on generative AI. They started developing a sales application on top of LLM before anyone was even talking about it. And then they pivoted and did LLM operations. And as I mentioned, I was one of their early investors. And I told them, why don't we shift gears and let's go and do LLM security together? So why don't you park this and let's go ahead? And they were very excited about this. And we already knew each other. We worked each other along the entire road at SegaSec. The trust there was more than 100%. So it was very, very easy. And this is where we said, let's go ahead and go into this new Wild West of generative AI, and let's bring the new sheriff in town to rule the LLMs. And this is how Lasso began. And this is also what inspired the name and the theme. You can see with our logo and the entire, so the hat
I love
is
it. Yeah,
intentional.
Yeah.
So this is where everything began and came to life early 2023.
Wonderful. So in terms of what Lasso does and what it stands for, can you tell us a little bit more about what are the key services you offer and what is it that you're trying to solve?
Okay, so basically everyone is storming the LLM era. And we are saying that there are a lot of pioneers out there, and we want to bring these pioneers into the LLM era in a secure and a safe way. So our mission is basically to help these organizations to join the revolution and enable them to work with these new tools without compromising on security and safety. And the pace that everything is happening, security is not top mind for them. They want to make sure that it's working and everyone is excited about it. Everyone is playing with it. But we want to make sure that this is happening, again, in a secure and safe way without bringing a too complex and too cumbersome world, and definitely not something which is boring for them, but would be exciting for them to use and to help them. So this is basically our premise, and our solution and services, and we'll talk about this in a bit, are basically aligned with that. Is making sure that we address the coming world, the unknowns, what is happening today, but also what will happen tomorrow, and that people can just join the revolution.
Yeah, that kind of makes sense. One thing, so you do have a background in security and cybersecurity, right? So what are the main differences between the traditional cybersecurity space and what you're seeing in the LLM security space? Why is it that we need a specialized security offering for LLMs rather than just use the traditional cybersecurity solutions that are out there?
So this is definitely a key question that we're being asked a lot, and we're also writing about that. You can read also a blog post on our website, and we're doing a lot of thought leadership on that. But at the basis of it, the way we see it, and I'll explain why, is that LLM security is a new category. It's not yet another feature that belongs in another platform. This new world is completely different. It is conversational. It is unstructured. It is situational. And you need to understand that. And if in the past, a lot of the attack vectors were around the binaries of the world and things like that, today's new attack surface is text. It is conversation. And as such, you need to understand it. You need to have a deep understanding into how LLMs operate and what makes them tick. And more than that, there are thousands and many more. There are tens of thousands of different models out there. You need to understand why one tool behaves in a certain way and why a different tool behaves in a different way and would give you different answers for the same question. And if there are the browser security of the world and the data security and the DLPs and yet a lot of other things, they're trying to solve a generic problem. And while you need browser security for LLMs, you need data security for LLMs, you need DLP for LLMs, they have a variance which is different. And this is why I think that they might provide a feature to address those, but in many cases, it is marketing that they're doing. They have a big baggage, and they will not pivot completely to this world. And we can talk about the different attack vectors in this world and why they cannot address it. But again, in order to understand the broader context and get into a conversation, this is not their comfort zone, not their DNA, not where the solution lies. And this is why you need dedicated solutions for this world. And I think it's already getting proven, and it will be proven more and more as we go forward.
That makes sense. So there are lots of companies. I mean, you touched upon the cybersecurity side of things. What are the key differentiators for Lasso? I know there's a few companies that are out there that it's still a burgeoning space. It's still new. So there's some startups. I've come across companies like Security, Ojas, Y Labs, Mithril. But then there's also the foundational model companies like OpenAI and Anthropic and the rest of them. And then there's the cloud providers. And now, as you've described it, not all of them are focused specifically on LLMs, but can you tell me what are the key differentiators compared to all these different providers that are now targeting this market for Lasso?
So around the ones which are not core LLM security, so this is not their focus. And while they can bring a lot of good innovation in that world, still it's not enough. And if you're talking about the model providers, they will bring innovation in their space and not something which is generic. So first of all, it's being model agnostic. So we're not, although we're doing a lot with ChatGPT and OpenAI, we're not LLM security for OpenAI or for ChatGPT, but also for others. So one of them is being model agnostic. The second one is that there are a lot of different interaction points that an organization has with the LLMs. And we look into all of those and providing products that would solve pains for the employees, for the developers, for the analysts, and for the applications which are connected to the different models. But everything has to be tied together into a single platform because everything interacts. And this is not a point solution for just working with ChatGPT, for example, or chat applications in general, but also looking at a more broader context and integrating those and passing the know-how and the best practices and the specialties between the different products and intertwining them, and looking also at the life cycle of the LLM and providing visibility into what's happening there and providing you capabilities to know what are you using and how you're using it and what you can do with it. And also with the deep expertise into the LLMs, and also, and this is also key, to train models of our own to address some of the use cases and to identify these. So in each and every one of them, we need to have technical expertise and the secret sauce that we have, but also, and this is part of the concept of everything that Lasso is that it is a wild, wild west, and it is changing. And there will be new villains, and we will need to adapt. And this is why I'm saying that the platform would need also to anticipate and be able to shift gears once new threats will come into play. And while there are good LLM security companies out there, I think that which in each and every one of the areas that I've highlighted, we have slightly different angle, and we're tying it together in a unique way. But the journey had just started. And there probably will be several good LLM security companies, not just one. Of course, we are working to lead the pack, but we need more competitors. We need more to succeed in this realm. And I'm happy to see other companies are getting into that space.
So you mentioned that you are also playing around with your own models, right? So do you use LLMs yourself within your own product stack?
So yes, we are. Those are things that we're using internally, and we're fine-tuning them to our needs and the use cases that we address. But definitely, yes, I think that it's not just that. There are others, so we're not relying everything on LLMs. There's also plain NLP and even regular expressions that are still valid for some of the cases. I think that in order to address some of the use cases without using your own LLMs, you don't stand a chance.
And how does that compare to, say, traditional AI ML within this space, right? So AI ML has been used in cybersecurity just to understand patterns and predict threat factors and things like that. Do you see a marked difference in how those solutions might evolve, say, compared to using LLMs for the same thing?
So first of all, we see some of them that are pivoting to this world, which involves working with large language models and the ones that were trained on huge data sets, and as such, the attack surface there is a bit different. The fact that it is generational makes it a bit different. So it is slightly different. Also, the fact that a lot more are using it in various deployment models, and the employees are using them a lot more, and things are running there very, very fast. So it is a leap from the previous world, and some of the previous AI ML security tools would be able to adapt to this world, but still it is also quite different than that world. But we do see some of those more traditional players are also moving to that world, and they, I think, will have a better chance than someone that was not in the space ever. So they also have a good positioning for fitting to that world.
That's great. So let's dive into a little bit more of the security features and some of the specific threats that Lasso addresses. Can you just walk us through some of them and elaborate on one or two a little bit?
Sure. So let's talk about the attack vectors, or at least what's known today, and then we talk about how we can address them in some cases. So the first one is the more naive one. It is the data leak, which are the employees which are mistakenly sharing information that they're not supposed to give. In other cases, they're getting information they're not supposed to get. So it is people that are uploading all the information they have. It's not just asking questions, but putting complete files or complete JSON files into ChatGPT or Bard and getting them to summarize some of them or format them or extract information from them. But within them, there could be sensitive pieces of information. And for that, there are different aspects that one can apply. That is from the browser extension that can sit and listen to the traffic and block it. It can be a piece of software which plugging in to the gateway at the entrance to the organization and basically tapping into the data, listening to it, applying our models on it, and also not just the learning, but also masking some of the data and even blocking some of the interactions based on what we identified there. It's in some cases, it's similar to a more traditional data leak, DLP, or even browser security aspect. But in other cases, when you're potentially putting core IP of an organization, this is not something that the basic tools can identify if you're exposing a piece of code which is proprietary for the organization. These are some of the concerns. In other cases,
and that's done in real time, right? So it's done in
real time. That is in real time, of course.
It has to be done in real time.
Of course, if you were to block it, yes, it has to be real time. In other cases, it could be the more relevant attacks for this world, the jailbreaks or the prompt injection, meaning that someone is trying to intervene with the interaction with the model, whether directly or indirectly, and manipulate and get the model to do something that it's not supposed to do, like spit data that it shouldn't, or apply all sorts of other malicious actions in the backend. And if we're working with the models that are deployed, integrated into the applications via API calls, this is where it can be the secured gateway of the world that would secure the APIs, and also things that could be plugged into the environment of the developers and be part of the development lifecycle to be embedded within the application code itself. So there are different mechanisms, different techniques that can be applied. But basically, wherever there's an interaction, we are thinking, okay, how that interaction is working and what is the best suitable solution to address this pain point, and also the operational considerations of the organization. As I mentioned before, if you're working with an enterprise, you need to know how it thinks. So it's not just providing the functionality, but if I'm providing you a tool, can you deploy it easily? What is the friction that it introduces? Who are going to be the objection, the people that would object to deploying it? Not just people from security, but people from IT or the development teams. How can we reduce their concerns while integrating a new solution into their stack?
Right. So you mentioned the word integration. That's something I was keen to understand a little bit better. How does your solution integrate with an existing enterprise system? Is it within the IT system, the cybersecurity infrastructure? Is it within the web browser? I mean, there's different ways of integrating.
Correct. So there are different areas. Definitely in some of the cases, security operations and IT, if we're talking about the browser extension, then security operations and IT need to be involved. IT would deploy it across the browser and different profiles of the users. If it's on the developers station, so if we have a plugin for the IDEs, it's definitely the development, the DevSecOps, which are involved. And of course, if we're plugging into the various gateways, or if we are introducing gateways of our own, then people from application security, API security, these are the people that are involved. So there are a lot of different stakeholders. And as I mentioned, because we're integrating with different areas, it's not that the same person we're talking with all the time. We need to bring other stakeholders, and the more that we take, more stakeholders need to get into the play. But you don't have to use all of our products and all of our solutions. You can start with one of them based on the pain that you have and based on the people that we talk with, and then grow later on. So it's not a must that you have to deploy everything in order to get value right coming out of the gate.
Yeah, so that we walk into the practical applications, use cases, and the conversations you're having with these enterprises. What has been your experience in terms of where enterprises are seeing the most pain, and where do they typically start off with on this journey? Can you also share any success story of how you've taken an organization from, say, step one to other steps? I know you're still early startup, but any experiences that or case studies that you can share would be helpful.
Yeah, sure. So basically what we're starting is asking the stakeholders, who is using generative AI within the organization? Who and what? So it's not just people, but also applications. Do you know that? Do you have a list? Do you know how they're interacting with those? Do you know what data is being passed? Do you know whether there are any issues? This is where the discussion is starting. And this is where we're starting to unveil, do they know or they don't know? And this is where we can start applying, some of the tools that they can start using in order to get that understanding. Once they're getting this understanding, then there's an intelligent discussion about what their understanding of how they're using it, how the employees are using, how the developers are using it, and things like that. And then comes the detection, okay, but if this is happening, if you see this piece of code which is being sent, or if I see this PII which is being sent, what can I do with it? Can I anonymize it? Can I stop it? Can I train the user? And then we're starting to apply the detection and the prevention mechanism. So once you're getting off the gate, you don't need to apply them. You're just monitoring motion in learning mode, and then you're learning what's happening. Those are the ones that don't know too much, but are the ones which are telling us, listen, I have here already the applications, I have the models, I have the data there, but now I have a question of how can I prevent internal users from getting exposed to data that they shouldn't? For example, how can I prevent a developer for seeing salaries data that I might have in there? That person is not allowed to access these systems, but within the models, I have this data, and someone can either mistakenly get it or can manipulate the model to get that jailbreak scenario. Yeah. And then we're talking about specifying, okay, what are the use cases? And then what is a normal question that someone can ask? What is a typical response that they should get or they shouldn't get. And this is where either we already have the mechanisms or we can fine-tune some of the models based on the use cases that we have. So there's also a different level of maturity within the organizations, because some of them are saying, listen, people are using it. Originally, I might have blocked it, but I'm telling them, okay, but if you're blocking it, you're blocking progress.
Yeah, innovation.
Do you know what to block? Some of them are saying that, yeah, but we've issued a policy. But then the question is, are you enforcing the policy? But they're not enforcing. So they're recommending people, please don't share sensitive information with the application. But that is not something that they can definitely enforce. And this is where the journey starts. But as you said, we are in an early stage, but the market itself is also in a very exploratory mode. But everyone is using it. Every organization that I'm talking with, everyone, they have one of these problems. Is this the most burning problem that they have? Not necessarily. But then it comes to also to the questions, what is the value that I'm giving you? How much are you willing to pay for it? So not everyone would be willing to pay the same, and not everyone is getting the same value, but not for everyone it is the top concern that they have. For some, it is top mind, but not for everyone. But as we move forward, it will be top mind for everyone.
I'm guessing there'll be specific industries like financial, healthcare, like highly regulated industries where this is possibly top of mind, right? Because then it puts them into trouble. People can share that sensitive information without knowing. So is that where you see the low-hanging fruits or the growth market for you, at least initially, as this technology develops? And they're also the ones possibly they are the most restrictive in terms of policies, I'm guessing. So again, there are ways that you can then balance the innovation and the security aspect. So any thoughts on that? I mean, in terms of the industries that you're seeing out there in terms of the conversations you're having?
So we see this basically all across. It is perceived that the heavily regulated verticals would be more relevant, and definitely as regulations is moving forward. But it's not just that, because even in areas that are less regulated, where you can lose pieces of information or sensitive or core IP that you have might leak and can provide even reputational damage to you, or you can lose your business, you can lose your customers' trust. It is everywhere. So we see this, of course, in financials. We see this in healthcare. We see this in retail. We see this in automotive. It's basically everywhere. Currently, we do see more traction with as you said, the more regulated verticals, but also with the early adopters, the ones which are running very, very fast, are saying, I'm going to increase adoption internally, and I want to make sure that security and privacy is covered. But there are the early adopters which are running very, very fast. But I think that the jury is still out there. I think that this is one of the questions where it would resonate more. And currently for us, we're talking with variety of organizations and variety of geographies and the different regulations across the different geographies. And we're trying to figure out what resonates more as we grow. But it is fascinating to see that everyone is running towards it.
That's great to know that there's enthusiasm. At the same time, they're in the exploratory phase, but that's good to know that it's coming across the board. I mean, we're hardly just 12 months into this into the LLM cycle, so it's still very early days, but it's great to see traction. So I wanted to also touch upon this debate that's happening around safety and innovation. So how to navigate this balance? How do you approach that debate, and how do you approach that within your own products? And different customers might have different thoughts on it, but do you have your own thesis or philosophy around this? Because you don't want to stifle innovation, have too many guardrails, and prevent the developers from developing any code. And so there's all of these sort of aspects which I think come into play. So what's your view on this, and how do you approach it?
So at a general security and usability are contradicting, and they're colliding all the time. But for many years now, and I think that the wave, it shifted fairly recently, but it is moving towards more enabling cybersecurity. So all of us, we need to make sure that progress happens and that the organization can work and adopt innovation and develop new capabilities and basically drive the business. Because theoretically, we could plug all computers out of the network and say, listen, security is perfect. No one can do anything. I'm taking this to the extreme. But we need to make sure that we're enabling, and also within our products, so we're protecting the employees, the developers, the applications. We need to make sure that there's minimal friction. With some of the products, there is zero friction, which means that, or at least one of my former managers was calling it zinimal, so zero to minimal. The one that you do not feel, but it is really protecting you, because we can block everything. We can make sure that they're trained to death, and instead of accelerating everything that they do, and this is what generative AI is bringing to our world, is accelerating productivity. So we need to make sure that we're reducing friction, and that we're not also in cybersecurity. There are dozens of tools that an organization is using, and we're introducing yet another one. So we want to make sure that it's not generating a lot of noise, definitely not a lot of false positives. It allows people to work, and it is enabling progress. So it is the concepts that we bring. It is the features that we bring. It's the deployment mechanism that we're plugging into. And eventually, we want to be silent. We want people to not notice that we exist, but to know that we've protected them. And this is, eventually, if no one knows that we're there, but we actually protected them, the question is, did we do enough work? So part of our work is also to do PR, that we have blocked it, and reports about what we've blocked, and to tell them, listen, you're protected. And this is why it's not just alerting that something has happened. This is why I said originally that it's a real-time and inline technology that could react in real time and prevent things from happening, prevents the mistakes, but later on to be as seamless as possible. And along the way, if we've prevented and we have stopped an interaction of a specific user, along the way, we've also indicated, okay, but notice something have happened. For the next time, please do not repeat the same behavior. And then we've also trained the user along the way. So these are the things that we are constantly thinking about and concerned about. And this is going across the board, everyone within my organization, and also working with customers. We're stressing them that we're there to help them and to work for them, and not vice versa. I don't want them to work for me with the tools and the platform that I bring them.
So you're kind of a silent sheriff in a way. You don't want to be too noisy. You want to make sure that you
Exactly.
maintain law and order. But
you know that there's a sheriff. You don't want to see all the law enforcement people around you, but you want to know that you're protected. There is a sheriff, and he's protecting you. But you don't necessarily want to see that person all the time.
Sure, that makes sense. That's great. So two questions I had and one was around future developments and innovation. What's the roadmap for innovation looking like in this space? Looking ahead, what are some of the things that you have in the pipeline for Lasso's products, and any new features or tools that we should be excited about? So
So first of all, it's changing all the time, and we're introducing new capabilities all the time. But if I'm thinking forward-looking, two things. One, there would be new technologies and new mechanisms in this world. It might be a shift from text to voice and video and new capabilities. So we constantly need to be aware of what's coming next, what's going to be the new attack surface, how people are going to use these tools, and keep an eye on that. But on the other hand, we need to see not just what we think that might be the new attack surface, but what actually the attackers are going to do. And in cybersecurity, we do not dictate the pace. They're dictating the pace. And once they will move and they will introduce new attack vectors on the new tools or on the existing tools, we would need to shift and pivot and adapt to what they're doing. And these two things will pull us into different directions all the time. And we need to be up to par all the time. So it's not just the innovation that I'm going to bring you next month in the new tools that I'm going to support or the new models that I'll bring and capabilities, but also what are the things that I don't know. So the unknown unknowns are the things that make me stay awake at night and keep anticipating. And once things are surfacing, we need to very fastly react to that. So these are the things that they excite me, and I think that we will all be excited. And this, again, I can't highlight enough, this is running at a pace that we've never seen before. This revolution is potentially larger than the cloud revolution and the internet revolution combined. So as such, we need to have very fast horses.
The last one I wanted to talk about or get your opinion on was, do you expect 2024 there might be kind of a big cybersecurity attack that becomes very public? Is that something you expect to see?
For sure. With the adoption of these tools, and also we need to keep in mind that the ease of use and the advancement of these tools are also making the lives of the villains easier. So they can generate more sophisticated attacks in a much simpler way. And with everyone adopting these technologies, they just need to go to where it's easy. So we will see the major breaches, we will see the major attacks. It's definitely something to stay on alert for 2024, for sure.
Great. Thank you, Elad. I think those are all the questions I had. It was fascinating to hear about your own journey and how you got started. And it's as I said, it's also great to see that within the 12-month time frame that we've seen LLMs come out, we have companies like yourself who are, on the one hand, trying to protect people, keep everything safe, but at the same time are also pushing for innovation. So I'm glad to hear that. Thank you so much for your time, Elad.
Thank you very much. Thanks for the opportunity to share it, and I'm looking forward to see what the future holds.